record. Okay. Should be recording now.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. If I can share screen. Cool. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
This little bar is like in the way. Okay. We don't have a whole lot of questions today. Do you see all of the black, or do you just see the front screen?
I see the black too.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why that's
No, it's
why
okay.
you're seeing that.
Yeah, it's okay. We can just ignore all the.
Okay. It's because it's showing it like the right way on my other computer or my other monitor. Anyway, so we read this very short thing, and it was talking about how which I think is really common. Someone comes into a new role and they're expected to kind of turn around what's going on there. So and that can be really hard to do. I know my friend is just starting a new position, and she was like really hoping she wouldn't stay where she was because she knew it would be a lot harder to manage like people she used to be colleagues with. So I don't know. It's always hard. Okay. So we don't have a whole ton of questions today. I think there's only 3 or 4. But it says, how well was Barbara Norris done in her first how well has Barbara Norris done in her first month as a nurse manager at GSU, and was she I can't type clearly. Was she a good choice for the position? What do you guys think?
Well, I definitely think she's qualified as far as education goes. But I don't feel like it goes too deep into her professional history. I mean, it tells obviously, yeah, she's been a nurse for years, but it doesn't like specifically say if she's been a great nurse or not, but I'm assuming so since they chose her for the job, and and she's been doing it for so many years. So I don't know. If I had a master's degree, I'd kind of be hoping for at least a management position, In my opinion.
Do you think it was like despite people recommending that she not take the job? Does that say something about her? Like, does that say something about I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really considered that. When I read it, I kind of read it as like they not that they didn't think she could do it, but that they didn't think that she should, just because they didn't want her to have to deal with all the stress.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That's
so
kind of
too.
how I read it.
Yeah, but that does come into a lot in like when you're getting a new job, like not as much like are you qualified for the job, but is that like a job that you'd want to deal with, as opposed to like going
Something
somewhere else and maybe dealing with something that's a little bit simpler, or like management and administration that's more caring,
Yeah, I think a lot of times people, when you're applying for a job, they think more of like the tactical and strategic stuff that you need for a job, but a lot of it, I think, is behavior. Like, anybody can learn anything as long as they put, their mind to it, but are they the kind of person who is going to put their mind to it is the thing.
Yeah, and I feel like this is kind of a specific situation because it's like she's new to the role and she's being thrown in where there's tons of issues. Like I felt like it was just issue after issue that they were telling us about, and I was like, I wouldn't even know what to do. Like especially when you're in a new role and you're trying to gain like your coworkers' respect and stuff, and she's really gonna have to step up and fix a lot of these problems. Like there's just problems everywhere with there's like the higher up, I can't remember what they called it, like the RN or something. There's like a specific role, and then there's like the other nurses, and then there's the issues with the patient like satisfaction. Like there's just issues everywhere and they keep losing employees too. So she's kind of being thrown in and she's getting a run for her money because there's a lot of stuff that she's gonna need to change. So I don't know. Like that's just what I thought of. Like I don't even know how well she's really done. It's like problem after problem that she's having to face.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
so too. Like I think um she has to do just as much of a good job, but if the people who she's working with aren't willing to make any changes, then there's nothing she can do at all. Um, but it sounds like people want to make the changes, they want to fix it. It's just whether or not they can compromise enough and kind of humble themselves enough to do it while also acknowledging that there's certain things that can't change, like the the budget and them not hiring new nurses when they need new nurses, you know. That being said, I think her conversation with them at the beginning was really good because it opened them up. I mean, it started out super awkward, but it created a safe space for them to voice their disapproval. And once one person started, then another person went, and then another person went. And so, despite, I know it's like a long list of really bad things, but I think it's better to have them out in the open so that they can collectively discuss them as opposed to like not talking about them. It's much better to make them known, you know. I
Yeah.
think.
I think another thing that kind of makes it harder for her, I think this is probably maybe what makes it hardest is the fact that they do have these things like uh their freezes and what was the other thing that they couldn't do? Oh yeah, no overtime. Isn't there
Which is ridiculous. No one would want to work there.
Yeah. So I feel like as much as these rules are in place, so what I put in my paper is like, okay, so they have lost some people and they have a hiring freeze. So, okay, we'll just work with what we have. But I put in my thing that she really needs to talk to Jeff and say, okay, if we lose any more people from here, we need to replace those heads because we're already short staffed. And with all of this like cultural change, I feel like it's just inevitable that some people are either going to need to be let go or they're just going to leave themselves, you know, because there's always a couple within that mindset that just they don't see that they are the problem, you know, and they're not willing to work as a whole group. They're just thinking about themselves. There's always somebody. So I feel like they're still going to lose some more heads. And I think she needs to talk to Jeff about that and have a serious conversation and say, look, okay, maybe we can put a freeze as to where we're at right now. But if we lose any more people, we need to replace those heads or else
Yeah.
we're just going to just keep going down the hill, you know. I don't know. That's what I put in mind anyway.
And honestly, it might be good that people are quitting. Hopefully, it's the people that are making the culture super toxic. Like that's something that stood out to me was like they're known for having a super toxic culture there. And I was like, no
Mhm.
wonder people keep quitting. Like I wouldn't want to work
Yeah.
there either. And then the whole overtime thing, I was like, this just sounds terrible. I feel like this is one of the worst like case studies we've read, other than the one where like people actually died in it. Like this one's actually really bad. Like there's just problems everywhere. I wouldn't even know what to do in her situation.
Yeah, I think this one's a pretty common one too, which is sad.
Yeah. Especially now, people get really cheap.
Hmm.
Well, even so, and if they lose any more people, then they won't be able to like provide the service that they need to. Like that's nurses are really important.
Yeah. Yeah, she could probably bring that up too. Just be like, you know, we have people's lives on the line here. And if somebody dies because we are unable to tend to them because we are so busy, that could be a liability. So
Yeah.
ultimately, maybe they're saving money by not hiring more people. But in order to avoid a lawsuit, I mean, should probably weigh our options here.
Yeah.
So maybe she could use that to her advantage.
Well, yeah, I think that the higher ups are like, oh, well, we can save money by not hiring more people, but then in the end, something bad's gonna happen, and it's gonna cost them like 100 times the amount in lawyers and being sued
Mhm.
by patients, families, and stuff. So yeah, that could definitely be a good argument for her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
I think
that.
so too.
I can go on to the next question because we're kind of talking about it anyway.
Okay.
If I can. Okay, there we go. Oh, whoops. I think I copied the wrong question. Ah. Well, 1 second.
Good.
At least one of this. We had 3 different questions. Sorry.
We're good.
Anyway, we can just go to this one. We'll just leave it there. So what changes is she trying to make and why? We kind of talked about that. But maybe we could, like, we kind of talked about the administrative side and changes that need to be happen there, but what about on the floor itself?
I think the first thing that they need to address is the culture, I think. So I put a suggestion in mine because it says that nobody helps each other. So I suggested maybe doing something like so announcing that like, okay, our new top priority is teamwork, because obviously being able to work as a team is going to help us better assist our patients. So if we put that at the top priority, everything will kind of fall in line better. And so one thing that I put as a suggestion in order for people to kind of feel more appreciation with each other is do like an appreciation board where everybody at the end of their shift has to say uh, one thing that they were appreciative, or bring up one of their coworkers and say what they did to help them and why they appreciate it. And then everybody can write what they or who they appreciated and why they appreciated them for everybody else to see, and like have that be like a requirement. And I think it might be a little weird for some people at first, but I think as they got used to it, I think we could probably even like make it be like, okay, now say name 2 or 3 different people that helped you today and why you appreciate their help, or something like that, just in case you start to get people who are only like, I don't know, doing like a kind of like a buddy bud system,
Yeah,
but
the
I
same
don't know,
people
just kind of
every
keep growing off of that so that people can start to see like, oh, hey, they noticed when I filled that prescription for them for their patient, or they noticed that I did this for them, and then it'll be like, oh, hey, maybe I'll keep doing that because people are actually appreciating that I'm doing that. Does that make sense? That was just a suggestion I put in there.
Yeah, I had something very similar. So one thing that I wrote, I kind of had 2 different things, like action plans, because we had 2 action plans. So the first one was that they work as like a buddy system. So every day on their shift, they get paired up with another nurse. And then that nurse is there if they need some help with something. So they each have their individual like 3 or 4 rooms or whatever that they're dealing with. But then they have like a designated person they can go to if they need help with something. So they each assist each other with each of their 3 or 4 rooms. And then that buddy system changes every day. So everybody's then partnered with everybody else. And then they can kind of get to know each other like on a personal level too. So because they're like interacting and they have to interact with each other like quite regularly. And then the other suggestion was similar to yours, where there's like an appreciation board. I like your idea, I think, better. One thing that when I was working on, so I was like a nurse, I can't remember what I was called. I was like a nurse assistant for a while in college. I did it as a volunteer work. And so I work on the floors, and one thing that they did is in the break room they had like once a week or once a month or whatever, they would change it and they would pick one person that they wanted to like highlight or spotlight, and then the board would be like, okay, they're really good at this, like these are their talents, this is where they're from, this is their hobbies, they have a dog, like this is why we appreciate them. And then I think they give them like chocolates or something. And so there's like pictures and all that stuff. So then one, people feel appreciated because they like it when they're on the board. And then two, people get to know them because they learn things about their lives. But I really like the kind of appreciation where you're talking like the list that people could like individuals could write every day so that they can like be appreciated every single shift. And however they do that. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I think that one thing that could be a problem is like if people don't get brought up, they might start to get a little discouraged.
Yeah.
But maybe if they're not getting brought up, maybe there's a reason for that. So could cause, I don't know, who knows? It could cause tension, but I mean, if you have to add more people, maybe it won't. But I really like your buddy system idea. I was kind of thinking of like maybe they could do pairs and stuff, but then I was just like, oh no, well then people are gonna like pick their friend and it's gonna only be the two of them. But I like how you said like they would rotate their buddies every single day. That's a great idea. And then they would be forced to work with a new person and get to know each other. I think that's a great idea.
I really like your guys' ideas. I feel like I kind of rushed through this assignment because I have a really big exam this week, and so I was just kind of like, whatever. I usually try pretty hard with these assignments, but I just kind of didn't do that well.
We got a good week because it's short.
Yeah, it's been nice. But yeah, I wrote down like the specific issues with their toxic culture, which were favoritism, confrontation, and blaming
smart.
employees.
Yeah.
Just so then like I could remember like specifically what their issues were. And I kind of said similar to what you guys said in the sense of like bonding ways, like ways to like help them get to know each other and bond, see each other as like people and friends and not just employees to compete with each other. Because I feel like that's kind of what's going on. Like there's just a lot of blaming and favoritism. So I don't know. I thought that team bonding could help. I know that their budget is kind of an issue, but I thought that maybe having like special incentives could help because they need something to balance out the not having overtime or whatever for when they take time off. Or some sort of like special benefit or something that they can like come up with. I don't know, like just a way to motivate them and get their hopes up. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of just like angst with each other. There's just a lot of issues with each other. And so I felt like something like that could help. That's like a good motivation is like, oh, we'll have a pizza party or something. I don't know. It's kind of dumb, but
oh no, I feel like that's very motivational. We love our pizza party.
That's pretty much all I said.
One thing that I also suggested that is I cannot take credit for because it was just something that they had at the hospital when I had my babies. But they have, and I'm pretty sure Zoe, you guys probably had this when you worked at the hospital you worked at or when you did your volunteer thing. But they had like these cards that they would give you, and they were like just like a blank appreciation card. And you could just write anything about your nurse that you really liked about her or something that you appreciated and give it to them or whoever. And then I was telling my mom about them and I filled them out for my nurses that I had. And I was telling my mom about them and she's like, oh yeah, they love those things. They actually will keep track of them. And when they have their annual reviews, then they pull those out and see like how many they've gotten and things like that. So
that's
I
smart.
added that to this as well. Yeah. So I added that could be like some kind of incentive, but I also put in there like maybe have like little baby goals, because next, like, who knows when the next annual raise is, you know, it could be in
Yeah.
3 months from now from when this was done, or it could be all the way next year. So if they need a little more like motivation from there, I was saying like maybe each time they reach a certain amount of those appreciation cards from the patients, then they can get some kind of small incentive. Like once they hit 10, they get, I don't know, a gift basket. Once they hit 25, they get a gift card. Once they hit 50, they get, I don't know, who knows. But yeah, I just thought that would be maybe another thing that would help them prioritize.
Yeah, I like that too. That's really smart. I hadn't thought about that. Did you guys talk anything about annual reviews in your paper thing?
I did.
Because I felt like that was one thing that people complained about a lot.
I think
I
for
mean, I
good
guess you
reason.
didn't, you just kind of mentioned it, but
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally get where they're coming from. Like, what's the motivation to do a great job if the nurse next to you is just going to slack off all day and get the exact same raise that you do? Like,
yeah.
nobody's going to try, you know what I mean? I feel like, so the way we do it at our work, which is what I based off on my paper, is so we have like, I think it's like 6 core values for the company. And each of those core values we have to rate ourselves on to see if we met or we missed or we exceeded. And then based on that rating, we had to give examples of why. So if I said I exceeded at it, I would have to say, like, say one of them's collaboration. So I would say, oh, I exceeded in collaboration, and I'd have to say, oh, I exceed in collaboration because I do this, and here are some specific examples of what I have done in order to exceed at collaboration, and pretty much just justify why you're getting it. And then once they write those reviews, then they get passed on to the next manager, and they review them and make sure that everything looks accurate, and they either approve or make adjustments as needed, and then they submit it off. And then depending on what score you get based on what they rated themselves as and what the managers rated them as, then they get a certain raise percentage. And so I think they could do something kind of similar to that, and then that way they can maybe even try to keep within the same budget, but some people will still get more than others if they're doing more work, you know?
Yeah, that would that be good though? I mean, I think it would be good. I almost feel like in part people could get really competitive with each other and be frustrated, like if someone else gets a raise and they didn't. But that's, I mean, I guess that's just kind of how it works.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of places are. Just
Yeah.
whoever works the
Well,
hardest gets
be
the
better.
most raise. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how my job is. Not nobody, I mean, everybody has different salaries, and it's just based on,
Yeah.
you know, your title and how hard you work, pretty much.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could be different in like a nurse. I've never worked in that kind of environment before, so yeah, maybe it doesn't work for that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just what we
Teresa,
do.
I mean, Lauren, did you talk anything about the 360 reviews? If
No,
not,
I didn't. I've just been listening to you guys.
no, that's okay. I talked a little bit, the way that we do it at my job, which isn't like the perfect way, and doesn't really have to do with salary, I guess. I guess it does a little bit. Yeah, I don't know exactly if it has to do with salary or not, because I'm not there, but we had to start, we had to get 3 of our like either coworkers or board members, because I work for a nonprofit, or like people connected to my org, you know, and that we work with, to give us, they had like specific questions they had to answer, and they had to email it to my supervisor, and then my supervisor would go over these questions. So they're basically like references or that people like that so you pick 3 people and then they would answer these like specific questions that they had about you, and then you'd sit down and go over it with your manager, and then so you'd have that first meeting, and then after that you would have to come up with your own specific goals for yourself, and then sit down again with your manager and see how those goals met with the other goals that we have with the organization, and how to make them kind of mesh, and so that you're developing the goals you need to make the team better, I guess. And it was really nice to kind of sit down and like have a concrete conversation about it. So that's kind of what I said, where like they could do these 360 reviews where they sit down with the manager and talk about what they need to do better. And honestly, like the managers, I mean, unless you're like really crappy at something, the manager's not going to say like, you suck at this. I mean, maybe they might. But instead, usually it's like really encouraging, saying, yeah, like maybe there's a few things you need to work on, but like you're doing really good in all these other areas. So, take that how you like and make your goals to try to, do that. So that's what we did in my job, and I thought it was nice.
Yeah, I like that idea of you coming up with your own goals instead of, I mean, obviously, yeah, you do need to work on the company's goals too, but I think I like that idea of making your own goals too, and because then you're the one setting that expectation for yourself. And if you're not meeting that expectation, I mean, you have nobody to blame but yourself, because you made your own goals. So
Yeah.
I like that idea. So nobody can say like it's unrealistic or, yeah, it's a good one. I like that.
Cool. Are there any other I mean, we can move on to the next question, but we only have one left. So is there any other changes she's trying to make that we want to talk about before I move on?
Let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to look at all my stuff that I wrote down. I think I pretty much got it all. Oh, I know they said something about the same people get asked to do things or something, like the assignments aren't equally spread between all of the nurses. So I said something about that, like we can't pick and choose who does what, like everybody has to take turns doing everything. But I think that's the oh, and then I also said to put in a suggestion box, and then whenever they have their group team meetings, then they would take out
I
all
actually
the
talked about that too. I called it a complaint box, so I like yours better. Definitely like the suggestion box idea better than the complaint box idea.
Yeah. Complain about this.
I give you permission.
Yeah, I mean, there could be complaints in there too. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to because I think a lot of places will have suggestion box, and then like the boss will like read it and just be like, oh, well, we can't do that, and then just kind of discard it,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they should have a suggestion box, and then whenever they have their like weekly meeting or whatever, they should get all those suggestions out, read them out loud to everybody, and everybody kind of collaborate with each other on solutions to the problem. And then that way, when people all have their hands in the pot, they all kind of feel like they have had a part of, I don't know, the solution. Does that make sense? And then then they get more pride in following it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then after a while, maybe things get better, and then they don't have as many suggestions in the suggestion box.
Yeah, and I feel like when they read it out loud too, like there might be people that are like, oh, I didn't even realize like I was doing that, or oh, I didn't even realize that was like an issue. Like I'll try to help with that or something. I don't know. Like some people don't even notice things that they're doing or what other people are doing. And so it might be nice that it's like pointed out in a group setting instead of just like, hey, you specifically, like, can you fix this or whatever? I don't know. I feel like that would be a really like positive way of fixing some of the issues.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. We can move on. Okay, last question. I'm gonna make it bigger. Okay. What are 3 obstacles to affecting change Norris should anticipate, and how should she address them?
I think backlash will probably be one of them. I mean, no matter what, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like the change. I feel like especially with like the technical side, because they said that they don't like having to do all that stuff on the computer. But it's kind of what's tough about that is that I mean, and I feel bad for people who, struggle in certain areas, but I feel like that's kind of just part of like having a growth mindset is constantly, being able to grow and change and learn with, especially when we have, updated technologies and things like that. Like it just makes sense to utilize them and not keep trying to do things the way they've always been. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
some people are
he
resistant
should
to
expect,
change, that's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. What do you think, Lauren?
I thought that maybe like resentment towards her could be an obstacle because like you said, like a lot of people they don't want to change the way that they do things or they don't want to pick up the slack where other people like aren't helping out, especially because they're understaffed. Like I feel like this is a problem everywhere. When you try to change anything, people are just like, now we have to do more work than what we were already doing. Like seriously. Like even at my minimum wage job, my boss would try to change like little things here and there to make it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
But then no one really saw that as, oh, it's not making it easier for us or the people that we're like providing for, like doing services for. Like people just don't want to change the way that they do things. So I feel like that could be an issue is like people could be a little more resentful or like have resentment towards her, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that all of this can help people though, like just the culture and the environment that they've kind of created is just super toxic. Like it's just not a healthy work environment. So it needs to change. And I think that she needs to tell them like this is not a healthy work environment, guys. Like you're not being kind to each other. Like our patients really aren't happy. Like I don't know. I feel like if she brings that up, that might help a little bit, but
Yeah, I think so too. I mean it goes, but I mean it's hard to imagine that, especially as like it sounds like it's so bad that everybody should be on board with changing, but then it also means that other people like need to step up and and do something different themselves. And like it can't just be like the management that's doing stuff. It has to be everybody working together. And so I don't know. That can be really difficult to do when people aren't willing to.
Yeah.
What about
I
like,
think,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was kind of fishing for stuff. What about like if like management doesn't let her hire new people or continues to not hire anybody? I mean, that's a pretty big obstacle.
Yeah, I think, uh, that would be really hard. I feel like that's one of the things that, I mean, obviously they're struggling, but they're still functioning as they are now. But if they lose any more heads, I feel like if they can't replace them, that's just going to be catastrophic, especially if you're
Yeah.
dealing with people's lives. I don't know. If I were
As
her,
nurses.
yeah, I would like make that one of my top priorities with Jeff to talk to him and be like, look, if we lose any more heads, which they're going to, I think that should be that's probably one of the obstacles they're going to have to face is losing people because whether they have to fire them or whether they leave themselves. But I think that's going to be one of the things that they really need to work towards because, yeah, I think she should really fight that with Jeff,
Yeah, I
in my
think so
opinion.
too. Yeah, because she can't do her
And
job.
I
She
mean,
doesn't have people.
yeah. And I think overall it would be good, like how Lauren was saying, like people will probably work better without them anyway, even though it's less people. And it talks about that in that book, the five dysfunctions of a team. She talks about how her husband was coaching that team, and when there was like this boy on the team, and he was really, really good, but he cared more about his stats over whether the team won or lost. So if he had good
Mhm.
stats but the team lost, he was still happy. But if the team won and his stats were bad, he would be upset. So even though he was really a really, really good player, he benched him, and the team played better without him, even though he was really good. Like if you're
Mhm.
not working with a team, no matter how, no matter how many skills you have, they're going to work better without you. So
Mhm.
it's just better to get them out of there.
Yeah, I agree. That is like a question that has come up before. Like, um, if someone's like a certified genius and like so good at what they do, but then they're a terrible coworker, like at what point do you say it's better to be a good coworker, and at what point do you say we need the skill set? Like, you know what I mean? Like we need.
Yeah. I think if they're in
I
a
don't know.
position where they're working alone, it's okay. But yeah, if they're working in a group, I think it's just toxic for the group, and it's just
Mhm.
better for them to
I think so too.
be out of there. Sorry, it's loud at my house.
That's okay. I was watching your dog in the back a little while ago, and he was very cute.
Oh, thank you.
He was just like doing his own thing on the bed, and he was like, stretching out, and then he got up and like walked around a little bit, and then he like got down and and left. It was really cute.
Little Ziggy. Oh, thanks.
So, I'm trying to think of other. I'm sure there's more, but we could probably call it. I don't know if do you guys have any other thoughts or ideas that we could talk about?
I think I brought up all my points, but you guys can keep talking, and I'll skim through my paper and see if there's anything else that I wrote down that I think is worth discussing.
I looked through my whole paper and I was like, I don't even know what else to talk about. I'm also like so tired, and like my mind is not like my mindset's not on this class right now. It's on my exam, and so like
What's your exam in?
economics.
Oh, fun. So
Yeah.
fun.
It's literally terrible. It's awful, but this is gonna be the second to last exam, and then I'll be done with economics forever. And I'm so happy. I'm so excited.
Good.
It's literally the worst. Like I've taken macro and now I'm in micro, and I feel like micro's harder. Also, my professor's terrible. So
Who's your
that's
professor?
um
You applied business management?
I am business management and operations.
Okay.
So I have to take micro and macro, but I just took macro first. I don't know why. But macro is a lot easier than this class, but our professor is just awful. Like he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like I was looking through stuff last night trying to study, and he had published the wrong formula.
Oh my
And
god.
I was like, dude, what? And so luckily I have a group chat in that class. So I was like, hey guys, is this a typo or is this right? Like I don't even know. He's the one that's supposed to be teaching us. And they were like, no, that's a typo. Like I emailed him and he's like, that's wrong. And I'm like, he's teaching us the wrong stuff. And this has
Literally,
happened a couple of times too. And that screwed me up on our last exam. So I'm just
Oh,
stressed.
that's
So
frustrating.
yeah, it's really
I'm
frustrating.
sorry.
So yeah, I was a little more quiet this meeting because I'm like, I'm
Oh, it's
so
okay.
stressed. My mind is like
We
all
yeah, we
over.
can let you go so you can go study.
You guys were
I've been
good.
there and I
Yeah,
hate
you guys were good.
it. So,
It's
but thanks for
tough.
participating, you guys. I'll send the PowerPoint to
Mhm.
everybody else, and they can, maybe just they might get on this link, and then it might pop up two links for you to share.
Yeah.
And then they can just talk amongst themselves. I think there's 6 of us total, right?
Yeah. Except for Rosallo. I don't know.
I've never heard
He's
of him.
never
Or like I've never seen him
never showed
anywhere.
up and never responded in the group chat. And I told the professor, I was like, is he okay? Like, I don't know if he speaks super good English. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't even know if he understands the instructions. And the professor's like, he should know by now, but there's only so much we can do.
Oh, okay. So the
Mhm.
professors talked to him.
I don't know if the professor talked to him. I had wrote in one of those, there was one where we had to like
Talk about each other.
yeah, talk about each other. And so I just said like he's never responded. Like I hope he's okay. I don't know what's going on. And the
Okay. I said
professor's
the same
like,
thing.
yeah, and the professor's like, he should know by now. Because I was like the third or fourth week or something like that. And he's like, he should know by now, but thanks for letting me know. So hopefully he reached out, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I just still see him on like the discussions, like when we talk about the book, he still responds on those. So I'm like, oh,
Oh,
he's still around. So I'm like, well, oh well.
I didn't
Yeah,
even
maybe he
notice that.
decided. Yeah, I mean they're only 10 points, so maybe he just figured he can just do the class without the meeting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess we'll find out. Anyway, thank
Yeah.
you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah, thanks for putting a PowerPoint together.
Oh yeah.
Even though it was last
Just copied
minute.
some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
guys. All right, thanks you too.